What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Slammed Outdoors. My name is Mitchell. Sorry for the absence in terms of videos. It has been a really busy month for me. Had exams for college and just had a lot going on, and the weather got cold where I am, so the fishing has been really tough. So I wanted to take this time to cover one of my favorite rigs, and that is the Senko, and the multitude of different ways that I go about rigging the Senko. So that's what this video is going to be about. Thank you guys for watching. So the bait that I'm going to be showing you guys today is the Senko made by Gary Yamamoto, and this is a soft plastic stick bait. These are a very common bait in the fishing industry. Just about every company has a version of this. This is my personal favorite. This is the one made by Gary Yamamoto, and this is the original Senko. So when you hear people talk about it, this is like the original bait that everything else has been kind of based off of. And the two main sizes I throw this in are a 5-inch Senko and then a 3-inch Senko are kind of my two go-tos. And then the two colors I use are black and blue, typically, or watermelon. And it's not necessarily the 5-inch in the black and blue or the 3-inch in the watermelon, but these are just the two sizes and the two colors I use. And there are a multitude of different ways to rig this bait, and I'm going to be showing you guys those over the rest of this video. So the first method that I'm going to be showing you is the Wacky rig, or the child rig as some people will call it. And effectively, this is the most basic way you can go about hooking this. So the hooks that I'm going to be using with this are, this is a Gamakatsu, this is a 3/0 extra wide gap hook, and this is kind of my go-to hook for Senkos. And my other two hooks I'm going to be showing off are, this is, I believe it is a 2/0, it's a Wacky weedless hook, and it has a little hook guard on there. And then my third hook I'm going to be showing off in this video is the drop shot hook, and this is, I believe it is a size 1 hook. It's very small, but it's probably my favorite hook to go with. But for this, and your hook decision is largely going to depend on your area. If you're fishing like open water for highly pressured fish, I would recommend this. If you're fishing this around brush or around trees, if you're worried about getting it stuck, I would recommend going to something that has a keeper. And if you're fishing for bigger fish, or if you're worried about losing fish, I would recommend switching to this hook. And for the EWG, which I very rarely do this with, just because my water is very pressured, all you have to do for this rig is just take the hook and find roughly the middle of this bait. There's a flat spot on the Senko, and it's a little bit to the right of that from what I remember. And you're just going to want to hook this thing right through the middle like that, and that's all you're going to have to do. And it should shake, and then effectively this bait should just slowly sink in the water column, and then you can just hop it back up. And it's got a big exposed hook point, so if something swims over and eats it, you're probably going to get them. If you're fishing heavily pressured water or heavy like structure and brush, I would not recommend this, because this is going to get stuck on almost every cast, and in heavily pressured water the fish are not going to really like it. Which brings me to the 3-inch Senko. If you're fishing heavily pressured water or heavy brush, hard to go wrong with the 3-inch Senko. And there are a couple different ways I like to rig this. Wacky rig, the small child rig, is probably going to hold true to be the favorite. And same deal, just want to hook it through the middle, and it should just bounce back and forth like that. And this is a great bait for bed fishing or fishing very shallow, very pressured fish. The problem is this falls very slowly, so you have to be very patient. And fishing it on a very windy day is just not much of an option. The other way that I like to rig this bait, with the 3-inch and this little drop shot hook, and I like to hook them through the skinny end of the Senko here just to get a little better hook point, just like that. And I just like to let it just kind of sit and float free. And this is something that I'll do on a drop shot. So if you're rigging this with something else hanging below it, this is a absolute go-to rig for me. If you've watched the drop shot video, I cover this in it, and this is just a great overall rig for it. It gets an exposed hook and it falls pretty quickly. It's an overall great way to rig this bait. If you're fishing more heavily pressured water, I recommend going to, or heavily structured water, I recommend going to this setup. And this is a similar style hook, but with a little keeper on here. And all you need to do is just push the keeper out of the way and hook your worm Wacky through the middle of it, and then push the keeper back in place like that. And it still has an almost identical amount of motion, but the cool thing is, the keeper should be stiff enough to keep it from getting caught on any branches. But if a fish swims over and eats it, you should be able to push it in, and you should get a pretty good hook point here. What I've learned with this rig is you really, really want to be patient when you're fishing this. So if you feel a fish bite it and hold on to it, I really think you need to let him have it for a while before you set the hook on him. And don't set the hook too hard, just because you don't get a great hook point with this in the way. So you really need to be patient with these and be careful setting the hook too hard. Next is going to be the method that I fish Senkos with the most. And this is going to be how I rig a Senko for if I'm fishing a Texas rig, weighted or unweighted Texas rig. So weighted, and the only difference here is the use of a bullet weight and then a peg if you want your bullet weight to be free or not. I'll go over this in a future video. But all you need to do, how you hook the bait is the same regardless. And you want to take an EWG, in my opinion, is the best hook for this. It's the straightest and it's just the easiest to hook this bait with. This is a 3/0. A 4/0 also works. A 5/0 is a little big, and a 2/0 is a little small. So like a 3/0, 4/0 works too. And all you're going to want to do is, in my opinion, I kind of label the Senko as there's a head end and a tail end. And the tail end of the Senko is the narrower end of the two. And you want to start this at the head end. And all you need to do is you want to push the top of your hook into the top of your Senko. And once you get to about the turn of the hook, which is about right there, you just want to turn this bait out. So you want to let the hook come out the side of the Senko like that. So after that step, it should look like that. So then all you need to do is you just want to push your Senko up a little bit further on the hook till it gets below the eye, and then push it up onto the eye like that. Then you see where your hook is in regards to the worm itself. You want to just try to line it up so this is as straight as possible. So you just want to push your worm up like that, and then put the hook into the side of it. And this takes a little bit of practice to get it right, but ideally what should happen is it should look something like this. And the nice thing is this prevents a weedless version of the Senko. So you aren't going to get this stuck in any trees. This is as weedless of a rig as you can get in all bass fishing. It has a very high hookup ratio because bass really like to eat these. So normally when they grab onto the Senko, they'll grab it and then swim off with it. And the other cool thing is it's like, if a bass does inhale this thing, you're going to get a good hook into them. Because these baits are very soft. So that is what I really like about the Senko. This is personally the rig I tie the most. And again, with a Texas rig, the only difference is there would be a weight up here. It would help this thing sink a little bit faster. If you're fishing deeper water, I would recommend the weight, but this is something I like to skip into like 2 and 3 foot of water typically. And this is kind of my go-to bait for finesse bass fishing. Another thing that's important to note is you should tie your hook to your line before you add the Senko, just because otherwise this is a much harder rig to tie. That is just kind of one of the important things, just because here there's no good way to get the eye in here. The one and only problem with this rig is the Senko is a very, very soft bait because it's filled with salt. It is very hard to unhook this if your line is still, like if you have line going through here. So the easiest way to unrig this bait is to actually cut your line and then pop the hook out here, and then the top of it should come out with it. Your Senko is relatively undamaged. Typically these do not hold up very well after like 2 or 3 fish. So what I like to do after that, just to reuse my Senkos, I call it recycling the Senkos, is after that happens, a lot of times I will typically go to a Wacky rig on my beat up Senkos, just because it's easier to rig. You can also rig the same style through the tail, but in my opinion, it doesn't really look as good. It's not as good of a presentation, but that is also an option as well. It's easier to hook it through the head, but that's just kind of my personal opinion. And I hope this video really helped you guys out. And if you have any questions about this rig, feel free to comment down below. Again, this is showcasing the Gary Yamamoto Senko, and there are a dozen other brands of these, and it's going to be the same hooking method for all of them for me. So that's really not going to change anything. And again, for my hooks, I always go with the Gamakatsus. Personally, I think they're the best hooks. 3/0 EWG, if you're going to go with the Texas rig, or like a 1 or a 2 size drop shot hook, if you want to go wacky, would be my 2 recommendations. And I hope this video really helped you guys. And remember to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. We are on the road to 400 subscribers at the moment. And I will catch you guys in our next video. Thank you.